Hello everybody and welcome back to Layla's Writing Lab. My name is Layla. If you remember, I put this question on my blog, which was writing about a process for the IELTS Task 1. And this is the process, this is the diagram that we have, starting with a digger digging clay all the way to the end where the goods or the products are delivered. So now I'm going to go through my sample answer and while I'm talking I'm going to be referring to the diagram, but also I'd like your attention regarding the passive voice that I've used and also the linking words that I've used, because in IELTS Task 1 writing a process, these two, the passive voice and the linking words, are key to getting a high mark in the exam. So let's begin. The introduction obviously I put on the post earlier, and so here I've just copied the introduction and overview that we talked about before. So the diagram highlights the process by which bricks are produced. The process consists of 8 stages, from having the clay dug by the digger to having the packaged bricks delivered to their assigned destination. And that's what we do in the introduction and overview. We list the first and the final stages of the process. Before I move on to the next paragraph, I would like to draw your attention to 2 ways of using the passive voice. One is the very basic way, which is using the formulae that I put again on my blog earlier, which were the different tenses and the different formulae that we use for using a passive. The next is using the structure have plus the objective plus the past participle of the verb. And this is something that I posted on today's Facebook page as well. So this is the second way of writing with the passive voice. Okay. Let's go to the next paragraph, and so here we talk in a little bit more detail regarding the different stages of the process. Initially, so this is where we start the process, and after each linking word we have to have the punctuation, which is the comma. It's expected and we need to use it. Initially, clay is dug by a digger. So in part 1 we're using the passive tense. Clay is dug by a digger, and I'm using the vocabulary that the text or the diagram has given me. Next, moving on to the next stage, next, it is placed onto a metal grid with a roller underneath. So again, I'm using all the information that the diagram has given me, trying to stay in the passive voice tense. At this stage, so instead of writing next again, I say at this stage. So now the examiner knows that we're not talking about this stage anymore. We've moved to the next stage. At this stage, having sand and water added to the mixture, part of it goes through a standard mold. So having sand and water added to the mixture, part of it goes through the standard mold and is cut with a wire cutter. So I'm explaining the first process after the sand and water has been added to the mixture. And before I carry on, again, I've used the passive voice here, but with the same structure that we used in the introduction. So have plus objective plus past participle. Part of it goes through a standard mold and is cut with a wire cutter. The remainder, so whatever's left, is poured into a shaped mold. So now I'm talking about this mold here. Now, as IELTS students, we're not expected to know that this, for example, is a frogged mold and then this is a standard mold. We're not supposed to know these specialized key vocabulary terms. So we're just going to try and use our own descriptions to the best of our knowledge. And you might have noticed that I've written mold, M-O-L-D, whereas the diagram has used M-O-U-L-D, and that's fine because this M-O-U-L-D is the British spelling and M-O-L-D is the American spelling. Then, so as you can see, with each stage, I'm using a different linker. Then, the molded bricks are placed in a drying oven. So now we're talking about the next stage, using the passive voice again. They are placed in a drying oven. Again, I'm using the vocabulary that I have been given. And here I've said in a drying oven, not the drying oven, because it's the first time that our listener or our reader is being introduced to this item. Therefore, we're going to give it the a article, not the. After drying for between 24 to 48 hours, so again, I'm using the information given. And here I am using yet another way of using the passive voice, and that is with the preposition after plus the gerund, and in the rest of the sentence, the second clause, we can use the passive voice again. But this sentence needs to start with after and the gerund. After drying for between 24 to 48 hours, using the information here, the bricks are moved to a kiln. They are moved to this area here, which is called a kiln, and they have moderate temperatures, which I'm going to be mentioning. They are originally moderately heated between 200 degrees centigrade to 980 degrees centigrade to higher temperatures of between 870 to a maximum of 1300 degrees centigrade. So I'm showing the examiner that I understand that there are two varying temperatures here. So it starts from a moderate heat, which is not very high, to a maximum of 1300 degrees centigrade. Following this, so again, the next stage, following this with my comma, the bricks are cooled in a cooling chamber for 48 to 72 hours. And again, I've used the information given in the diagram. Finally, so we're talking about the final stages of the process. Finally, having the bricks packed, so I'm using, where was it? I'm using this structure again with have or having plus the objective plus the past participle. Having the bricks packed, comma, put on a pallet. Now this is a pallet. This big piece of, it's usually made of wood where you put very heavy materials on top of it, and then usually it goes into a lorry or a truck. So this bottom part here is called a pallet. Having the bricks packed, put on a pallet and placed inside a lorry, so I've used packed, put on a pallet, placed it in a lorry, all in one sentence. And because they're all verbs that I'm using following one from another, I would only need one occasion of having. Having the bricks packed, which means having the bricks put on the pallet, having the bricks placed inside a lorry. Obviously we don't want to keep repeating ourselves, so we use having the bricks at the very beginning, and then the rest of it is just simply mentioning all the verbs. Placed inside a lorry, they are delivered to their assigned destination. Yes, placed inside the lorry and they are delivered to their assigned destination. And that's the end. So I think I've written around about 168 words, which is perfectly fine. The question usually asks that we write a minimum of 150. I have organized it in paragraphs, which is very important in IELTS writing. We have our complete introduction and overview. We have all the different stages which have been put in paragraphs, but most importantly, we not only have the linkers, which which show the progression of the stages, but we're also showing the examiner that we know of 3 different ways for writing in the passive voice. One is with the structure of having and the objective plus past participle. One is with the very standard basic structure of am, is, are, or was and were in past tense plus past participle, and one is by using the preposition after and then the gerund, and then later you use the passive again. So that is a very good sample of an IELTS Task 1 writing for a process. I hope that you have found this little tutorial and sample answer useful. If you have, please do share this video on the Facebook page so others can maybe look at it and use it for their own purposes. Thank you very much.